Hey, I'm Patrick Smith, and today you're listening to episode 10 of the Mountains and Leadership podcast. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
All right.
Tired. I'm tired.
You're tired, man. So Mark is doing the 75 hard challenge for all of you who might be interested. He's going through it right now.
Yeah. So, it's 75 days straight of 2 45-minute workouts, a gallon of water a day, no alcohol. Stick to a diet. Like I'm doing like no sugar, very low carb.
What time were you up this morning?
I was up at 5. Tuesday morning, the day I started, I had to go to Grand Junction. We had to be on the road at 5 o'clock. So I was at the gym at 3:45. One of those workouts has to be outside. Read 10 pages. Yeah, it's legit. It is discipline, and I'm proud that my daughter's doing it with me too.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you guys,
Thanks.
and we'll get through it today. I know you're struggling. Last week I was struggling because of my voice, and then I'm still have residual from that. But this week you're going through it.
Yesterday didn't help us either. Like we've talked all day long.
Yeah, and so guys, today we are going to talk about the real state of real estate.
Yep.
And our podcast is business based, but we wanted to look at the state of the market, look at that from a national standpoint, and then we'll even provide folks in the Denver metro some stats here in a little bit, just to help them out, since that is our stomping ground.
And these are our industries, guys. Like just to give you my background, I started in mortgage in 1997 with household finance, doing subprime, 11.99% first mortgages to 100%, doing cash out refis for people, and just helping them improve their financial situation. I moved from there to GMAC Mortgage. I moved from GMAC to Countrywide, sold real estate for 6 years, got back into lending. Now an area manager with SunWest Mortgage, which that's great. I love it.
You've been through a few cycles up and down with the market. I remember 2000, we had a huge refi boom going from 8% to 7%. Anybody that was above 8%, man, they were scrambling for that 7% rate. And then after 9/11, the stock market, I remember it opened up real near 8,000. And the reason is because there's an adverse effect between the stock market and the bond market, right? Mm-hmm. So mortgage-backed securities are what set mortgage rates. Well, if you don't have to, the reason that rates are high now is because they have to offer good returns to attract money in to be able to lend out. And this is we're talking about from life insurance companies, pension plans, like big investment firms, right? So that's what kind of drove our rates up right now, is because of mortgage-backed. Well, it is because of mortgage-backed securities, but we saw the mortgage-backed securities, all the money ran from the stock market over in the bonds for a safe haven. And so that drove rates right after 9/11 to 6%. I closed, and this might not seem significant, but I closed 29 loans myself, November of 2001. In 1 month.
In 1 month.
That's insane. That's actually phenomenal business, like to do that much in 1 month, just one single person. But man, it's, the market we're in, everyone that I've talked to has a different opinion. And then when you look at the news cycle, you look at news articles, if it leads, it bleeds. And so there's a lot of sensationalism going on. But then there's also some good practical information that's been sent out. But the problem is with that practical information is it contradicts with what you might see in the sensational side of the aisle. And so people are really just confused. They don't know what to think. They don't know what to believe. They don't know how to make it's not that they don't know how to make a good financial decision. They know how to make those decisions, but with the data they've been given, they're gun shy because they don't know what the truth is. And so today what we want to do is dive into what does that truth actually look like. Practically speaking, Mark spoke to his background. I'll give you mine. So right out of 2 weeks out of high school, I went into architectural design school, and I designed and helped build houses and commercial custom homes, things like that. And then I worked for a home builder for a while, and then I did some stuff on my own doing designs. And I've designed and helped build close to $2 billion worth of real estate in my life. Then from there, I leveraged that skill set, became a project manager in finance, and did that for a couple years, and really didn't like that side of the aisle. And so I went back to school for engineering, and then I worked as like an oil and gas, doing investment analysis, looking at economic yardsticks, building economic models as a reservoir engineer for a Fortune 500 company. And I've made that company millions of dollars. And so when I look at data...
You mean billions with a B?
Well, yeah. I mean, we did all right. We'll put it that way. I have a lot of perspective when it comes to digesting the data and being able to read between the lines, because sometimes people that sensationalize the market going too good, I'm like, hold on, pump the brakes. Let's take a practical approach here. And so that's my background and where I'm coming from. And I came back and, you come back to your first love, which mine was real estate. And so I have my own real estate company now. And of course, Mark is on the lending side. So we work together. And so that's our background. That's where we're coming from. And today we're going to attempt to give you guys some valuable data across the nation about what's going on. There's a lot of good information out there that's actually backed by true data. Data does not lie. Statistics can lie. You can distort statistics. If you don't understand the data behind it and the process in which you use to come up with those stats, you can make stats say whatever you want them to say.
You need to read the details of the stats too, as we experience just reviewing our notes for this, right?
Yeah, so we've done you guys an amazing favor. We've been able to boil all that down, and we've vetted that. So you're looking at some good information here, and really what we want to do today, we want to talk about some of the stuff we're seeing first, and then Mark is going to dive in. I mean, Mark, I feel like you're probably more equipped to talk about some of the stuff than I am. You're going to run with that and kind of give a breakdown of what you're seeing in the market on the financial side. And then we have some stats for you, and we're going to talk through what this means for you as a home buyer and possibly a home seller. The largest population out there right now that's knocking on the doorstep of home ownership are the millennials. Mm-hmm. So we're going to address you guys as well today.
Right. And yeah, we have so many stats. So let's roll into it. So, we're dealing with, we just dealt with another 0.25% Fed interest rate hike, right?
Yeah. And that was as of, today is August 4th. So that would have been August 2nd that they did that. So yeah. So we're dealing with, just that 0.25% rate hike. So, what people don't realize is that is the rate that they charge banks to borrow money from the Fed to lend out to people. So then the banks then have to mark that up to make their margins, to make their profits. So this is the cost of the money the banks are paying. This is not the cost of a mortgage. For our viewers, can you give them a real world example, practical application for today? So what are the rates that the banks are receiving right now?
Well, let me just tell you. Hold on.
So while he's pulling that up, just to reiterate, the Fed actually governs what rates the banks get money at.
Yes.
And then if they get rates for an example, if they get rates, let's say at 3%, they cannot loan that money out at 2% because they would take a loss. They would loan that money out at least something above 3.
So today's 8.5%.
8.5%.
That is where prime is. So that is what the banks are paying for their money. So you can expect to pay at least 1% higher than that if you have A+ credit going to get a car loan.
Wait a minute. Are you saying our interest rates are around 9% right now for home mortgages?
For consumers. That's on the consumer side. Now, homeowners are not.
So I asked that on purpose. So
we're under 7 for home loans, right?
So what are the banks getting for those home loans? Like for their, when they lend that money out, they're getting it from the Fed right now at about what? Roughly somewhere around 5 or 6?
The banks don't get money from the Fed for the home loans. That's just it. They get money from Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, from the mortgage-backed securities. Okay, so we're paying. So the mortgage lenders are paying what 6%, 5.5% to 6% for the money, and then the rate that you're going to see on the street is about 6.75% to 7. Because we have overhead, we have the same markup that the banks do, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we're getting on the mortgage-backed security side. So the banks. Yeah, the banks don't lend. The only mortgages.
Well, they print money. They put money out there. It goes through the banks, and so it goes to the banks from the guys who print that money, and it's not necessarily Freddie Mac, Freddie Mae, whatever. It's
they regulate it or they monitor it, but the money's coming out of the mortgage-backed securities. It's coming out of the 10-year bond, 30-year bond, those ones.
So quick lesson for you there. Banks get that money at a lower rate than you. They put it out to you. That's how they're making their money, guys.
Right. And that's typical business, right? You buy a product, you mark it up, you sell it. I mean, that's just, when you go to the grocery store, you go to the gas station, everything.
Tomatoes,
yes,
watermelon,
everything.
whatever.
That's just normal in the business. Granted, it's a smaller margin at when we're talking about mortgages, right? It's a smaller percentage markup. We're not doing a 50% markup like you're going to do on most retail goods, right? If you walk into a store and you're like, oh, that hoodie is $75. Well, it costs them $37.50.
So what are our rates if I'm a home buyer today with excellent credit and I'm making an average of about $150,000 a year? What could I stand to borrow at? What kind of rate are people getting right now, Mark?
Let me see here. This is as of yesterday morning. These are, and I like to use this as kind of an indicator. These are my CHFA rates. So this is with down payment assistance and stuff like that. So it's a good middle of the road.
Yep.
You can always get a little bit lower if you're bringing more down payment, or if you're running conventional and running a lower credit score. So
what are the rates?
6 7/8 to 7 1/8.
Okay, somewhere between 6 and 7%. And then what about just for just a standard conventional loan right now, home mortgage loan?
You have 20% down, conventional mortgage loan. You're going to be about 6.5.
6.5%. Okay, so that's a good thumb and error just for anybody as a spot check right now. What we're looking at now, what we are seeing right now. I mean, I can't count how many conversations we've had recently. You know, what Mark and I are seeing, Mark, I want to talk about that. From my perspective, people are fearful. They're either fearful or they have FOMO. They don't want to miss out.
Right.
They don't know, like, hey, okay, have I missed my time to buy? For some people, it feels like a pipe dream to even own a house right now. And then others are just confused and insecure, like I mentioned earlier, because of all the conflicting information out there. So they don't know what the right decision to make is, and they're waiting to see what's going on.
Well, they think that they missed out on a chance to sell because the peak was June, July of 2022.
Yeah.
And they think, oh, man, that was my time to sell. Well, guys, we had an 11-year increase in prices. And if you listen to the media, you know, this is the first time in over a decade prices fall. Well, they're not lower than they were 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
No, they're but see, the thing is, so I want to clear something up real fast, and it's, Mark, I invite banter back on this if you disagree. Just tell me what you think. But this is what I'm seeing is, you know, these reductions in home prices that we have observed. It's not that the home value itself declined. It's that because of the way the market was the last couple of years, you had people bidding over what the home was worth. And so it artificially distorted those numbers. So what we're getting back to is a baseline of what we saw back around 2018-19 before
Correct.
Things went nuts, you know, when COVID did all that. COVID triggered a lot of things. People wanted more space in their home. They wanted a workstation because they're working from home. They're moving. They figured that they could move out of, you know, a state because now they can work from home. All these things revolutionized the working that we were doing. I say revolutionize, that's probably not the word, but you know what I mean. It triggered a lot of moving around and home buying and a demand that it wasn't really artificial. It was a real thing, but it wouldn't have happened otherwise. And so that demand, I mean, you look at Silicon Valley, where is that at? That's in Cali. We all know a lot of people are leaving Cali. That's like a stigma right now. Well, if they can work remote, they don't need to be in California. All those high prices of living there, people were moving to Florida, people were moving to Texas, people were moving to wherever. And so these home prices were being driven up all over the United States because the demand was there for that. And so when they would list a home, what would happen is someone will list their home and the demand was there. And let's say for easy math, it was $500,000, right? Well, someone would then offer $525,000 or $550,000. So then they'd sell for $550,000. So then their neighbors were like, man, they sold for that. Wow, $550,000 over. So then they would come in and sell their home and they were motivated to sell. So then they'd sell, but now that home goes for $575,000.
Right.
And then the next one was $600,000. Then the next one was $620,000. And really what happened...
At the same time, we had these low rates, like 2 to 3% rates. 2
to 3%. It was pretty much free money is what people were seeing. And excuse me real fast, but places like, I will not say their names, but let's call them some really large real estate industry data companies. And a lot of you look at the houses on their websites quite frequently.
Mm-hmm.
But Zillow went in, like they, you know, you look at the Zestimate that they have, right? Or you look at Open Door, places like that. What they were doing is they would go in and they would buy a home, right? They would go buy a home in a neighborhood. And in that neighborhood, let's say the home was selling again for, I don't know, $500,000. The bidding would start. They would come in and offer $575 to get the house. Of course, no one wants to pay $75,000 over asking. So they win the house. They buy the house. They turn right around and they buy the house right around the corner for $625. Now that $575 home is now worth around $625 comparable.
So they were inflating the market themselves.
They were inflating the market themselves. And then, you know, from there, they built instant equity on those homes they bought prior to that last one in that neighborhood. And so you're seeing a lot of that happening. And the problem with that is the comparables. So you had less experienced agents that were going in and they were saying, oh, I got this listing. Well, they just sold that house for $575. They sold that one for $600. They were listed at $520 or $500, but they sold for $575. So they go in and they're with their client. They list their home for $575 or $600 when really it should have been listed for about $500 to $525. And so now what you're seeing is some of these price reductions. Things are stabilizing because the interest rates are higher.
Corrections.
It's a true correction is what it is. And it needed to happen. Mm-hmm. It needed to happen. But the problem with it is that some people that haven't experienced these housing cycles, they're just now getting into the market ready to buy. They're looking at all this stuff and they're like,
they feel hopeless.
You know, why should I buy? You know, oh my God, all the houses, you know, the prices are going down. It's not that. Like right now, looking at the data, if we're kind of in a trough and they just did the last hike probably they're going to do for a while. I mean, Powell has already said that they want interest rates to be around 4% by like middle of next year. And so we're at the peak of what those rates are going to be. They're going to start coming down again. Price corrections have already occurred across the nation. And, you know, if you are a buyer.
What do you use for an indicator as far as the price corrections and where we're sitting, like with, you know, salesmanship or, you know, saleability of a home? What do you use for indicators? What do I use for indicators on what the home will sell for? Or where the market is, just your thumb on the pulse of the market. What are some of the biggest indicators you use?
I use the interest rate as one of them. I use the average days on market. I use the average sales price across the nation and then localized to the market I'm in. I use, I look at the condition of the home. I look at the amenities of the home. I also look at the demand, the pent-up demand, you know, what's the supply? How much do we have? Like if we've got less than 1 month of supply, like we do, well, I think we're right about a month, maybe 1.3 months in the Denver metro.
Right.
So that's still a seller's market in some pockets. In some parts of the zip codes that I'm looking at, buyers are actually getting better deals in certain zip codes.
So yeah, that's on the days on market, where we're at on that, like nationwide.
Nationwide, I think we're 18 days on average.
On average.
Yep.
Where are we in the Denver metro?
Denver metro right now, we're looking at like 13 days.
Okay. So
it's not
nationwide during the biggest like shopping spree in the middle of the pandemic was 16 days on market. We're at 18 now nationwide. Okay. Yeah. We're definitely in a housing crisis.
Yeah, we hit what was it? We hit like January, February of 2023. We hit roughly 33 days average on market for the nation,
which is normal. That's a normal market.
That's a normal market. 2018, you were getting interest rates at around 4.7.
Just call it 5. Just call it 5%.
Yeah,
for
high 4s, low 5s.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and that was 2018. The problem is the home prices weren't inflated up the way that they've been because of the overbidding. And so we've gone through how many months now of a correction with all these interest rate hikes. Things have corrected. We're in a good spot now for buyers to come back in. Problem that we're up against is the sellers look at that interest rate and they like that 2 and 3% that they locked in over the last couple of years.
So they don't want to sell.
They don't want to sell the home, so the inventory is not there.
Okay. So what you're saying is that they don't want to move even if they hate the house.
No, I mean, why financially,
right?
Why would you?
Looking at it logically.
So, I mean, what are your thoughts? What are you seeing on your end of the aisle with people who are selling and buying? I mean, you're having a lot of conversations.
Well, that's something I pulled up here.
Because you work with buyers a lot. And so your buyers, a lot of times they're selling their homes.
Right.
And I mean, what are you hearing about what they're saying?
All right. Well, first of all, there was something I thought of while you were talking. The thing about COVID is that and being able to work remote and everything else, that enabled a lot of people to be able to bring in like outside competition for their job. Mm-hmm. So not just dealing with local.
Yeah.
So that's driven income up considerably, right? We've gained a lot of income. Now, I will say, right, first of all, I'm going to address this. So what you were asking was the main reasons for selling. It's kind of surprised me, but the main reasons for selling, according to Brian Buffini, which if you guys want to get more data on this, go listen to his podcasts. Brian Buffini's been in the business 37 years. Pretty knowledgeable. There's a podcast he did July 11th, and he brought in this guy that used to work for HUD, worked for Freddie Mac, he had some credentials. I couldn't believe this guy's resume. He was stacked. I had to listen to that podcast 3 times, and it's only 30 minutes just to try and absorb everything that he was spitting out. And I can absorb stuff pretty well, but that was good. So, main reasons for selling now: desires to move closer to family, 21%. Moving due to retirement, 11%. Neighborhood becoming less desirable, 11%. Home too small, 10%. Change in family situation is only 9%. 9%. Now, we met somebody yesterday that had a change in family situation that wants to buy a house because they're living in an 1,100 square foot house. But man, this woman's a freaking hero in my book. What she adopted one of her students. Yeah. She adopted one of her students and her little brother that were experiencing abuse.
Yeah.
And that was phenomenal. So that's a change in family situation, right?
Those kind of clients we like to work with, by the way.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah. And it's the change in family. I mean, whether you're going through a divorce or you've just got married or you're having children, you need to scale up, scale down. You've got a lot of senior citizens that are actually looking to sell and then scale down. So those are some of the areas where you as a buyer, if you've got a studious and prudent agent that can go suss this out and find these types of people looking to sell, they can unlock inventory for you. So this is where you as a buyer need to hire a skilled agent. They need to know what they're doing. They need to be able to put the work in. They cannot be some of these fly-by-night agents that they saw an idea to make a quick dollar over the last couple of years because you could just slap a sticker price on a home and sell it in 2 days. It took no skill. You need somebody now that really knows what they're doing, and they need to know how to tap that market of people that are motivated to sell. And there are sellers out there that will sell. Now, for you millennials out there, I think we're now at a point where 51.5% of all millennials actually are enjoying the process of homeownership.
Define millennial.
Millennials were born between, I think it's 1980 to 1996.
Okay.
And, I call myself a pseudo millennial. I'm 1985, but I'm more like I'm like more Gen Xer kind of. I don't know. Anyway, that's how I grew up. But
I'm full on Gen X.
Right. Yeah. You definitely fall in that bucket. But my message for you guys would be that homeownership is attainable. I think we have roughly 17.1 million millennials that are on the doorstep knocking on homeownership, wanting to own. A lot of them feel discouraged. A lot of them don't have money saved. They can't because the cost of living has been so high. But what I would tell you guys, for any of you that fall in that bucket, if you are able to buy and you have the money there, I want you to think about something here for a minute and just hear me out. Just for a second. So home prices have gone nuts over the last couple of years, and you've looked at that and you've said, no, thank you. That's nuts. I think, what is the stats? What we're looking at roughly, what is it? 3 million households that make over 150K per year are still renting right now.
Yep.
If you're in that bucket, here's the deal. Right now, you're looking at that high interest rate. But what I want to show you is this, is that because the market has softened some because of these higher rates, the home buyer or the home sellers now, what I'm seeing is that they're more apt to work with you and negotiate.
And concessions,
and
things like that.
With concessions, with repairs when you go through the inspection process. I was, last couple of years, I was seeing where people were like, no, I'm not repairing anything. No, I'm not working with you. No, I'm not doing it. No, I've got 3 other offers. I want over asking. I want you to waive all your appraisal and give me appraisal gap. No, I'm not repairing anything. And so you'd get into a home, you'd overpay for it. You had no leverage to negotiate on repairs if you saw something with it, anything like that. And then the home builders, I mean, they had no incentive to negotiate with you for any reason because they were doing well. And so right now, you can negotiate more. You can get more. You can get a better deal on a home, but you're contending with that higher interest rate. So what do we do about that?
Well, I think that this is something that blew my mind. You know, people were willing to pay $50,000 appraisal gap. I will pay $50,000 more than what this house appraises for so I can get that 2.9% interest rate.
I mean, that's what we're seeing in the Denver metro. That's what we did see.
Yeah, we saw that all over the place. But you know what? If you give me $25,000, half of that money, and let me use that as a buy down on your rate, I'm going to get you close. That's what I don't understand. People don't see the math both ways.
Well, but see, so mechanically, how does that work? So if you put together a good team, right, you've got your real estate agent. I'm talking to the buyers, right? You millennials right now, if you've got a good real estate agent and you've got a good lender, okay, and they're talking, what that agent can do is say, okay, like me and Mark are going to role play for a minute. So we share the same client. I'm going to call Mark up. I'm going to be like, Mark, how is so-and-so like financially? Where are we at on the budget? What can they see, you know, in terms of home price? What would you say? Okay, 500,000.
I'm going to be like, okay, I've got them qualified for a $500,000 property.
So then we start looking at $500,000 houses. They find a home. They put an offer on the home.
But what I'm going to tell you up front though is I've got them qualified FHA, and the maximum FHA concessions we can get is 6%. So you can get them about if you can get them about $30,000 on concessions instead of negotiating price down, go for it.
Yeah. So it's like this home's $500,000 they land on, and I talk to Mark, I get that information, and we're jiving, right? And I'm like, okay. The client says, well, oh man, maybe we could get 470 instead, or let's offer 490. And I'm like, let's offer 500 with 30,000 in concessions, or let's offer 500 with, even if it's 20 in concessions or 10 in concessions, you can take that. And basically what happens is you buy the home for 500,000, right? But they concede, the people who sold you the home, 10,000 or 20 or 30,000 of the proceeds go towards your rate buy down. So they buy your interest rate down so you don't take a hit there. And that's what Mark is basically saying. So that's one of the things you can do. Another thing is that what we know right now is these rates are going to come back down. We're looking at maybe like Q2 of next year. They're going to be floating around mid to low 5s.
Yep.
So you marry the purchase price, you divorce the interest rate. And right now, your purchase prices, people are working with you. The repairs, they're working with you. So those negotiations then become easier for you. So you get in and you marry the purchase price and the negotiations for the repairs and all that, which is good in your favor. The bad part's the interest rate. Well, then you come back in a couple months, 6 months, refinance. And if you do the math on that, what's a going rate on a refinance, or the cost of a refinance? It's like $5,000.
About $5,000.
So you refinance $5,000 in about 6 months, right? Well, here's the deal. Had you bought that home with $50,000 over asking price, or $10,000 or $20,000 over asking in the heat of the market,
you're out of that money.
Yeah, you actually are money behind, even if you amortize that out over 6 months and, well, I could have invested that money and made this much, whatever. Like, you are actually money ahead by doing it that way. So you marry the purchase price, divorce the interest rate, maybe less than a year. Mathematically, you are money ahead for your household. You worked a better deal. Why is that important? Well, we're projected to sell about 4.2 million homes this year. Last year it was like 5.1 million.
5.1, yeah.
Next year they're projecting an increase of home sales of like 500,000. So things are going to ramp back up. You're going to have more competition again with the lower interest rate, which is going to drive that competition back up. And then the stipulations you had on those negotiations to buy that home are going to be worse again. You're going to be in the same bucket again. You're not going to get the
concessions. You're not going to get the repairs. You're going to be like, take it or leave it.
Well, and people, so that's one point, right? The other point is people think there's a housing crash coming and they're waiting for it. So why don't you address that?
So, all right, in 2008, I was in the market. We experienced the housing crash. Now, what brought on that housing crisis was the adjustable interest rate loans, right? Adjustable rate loans. Now, there was one that I'm going to call them out, Countrywide put out. It was called a pay option arm. Now, I actually did a few of these. I was like, wow, this is crazy.
This is in 2008.
This is before 2008. So this is 2005, 2006.
Got it.
That we were doing these loans, right? They started adjusting in 2007, 2008. It
takes some time for that to take effect, right? So got it.
So I left Countrywide in 2006, and I went to another company. But what happened was, these pay option arms, you had 4 options. You had a negative AM, which was the basic minimum you had to pay them. You had an interest only, which was just paying the interest, not going backwards.
These are the types of loans that were out there.
This is one loan. You had 4 options. You get your payment statement every month, and it's like, please check the box on which option you're paying this month. Well, most families are gonna be like, yeah, I can use that extra $500, $600 this month. I'm just gonna go with the minimum payment. They start going backwards. And then they start adjusting, and then the interest, then the payment
interest rate increases,
then interest rate increases and stuff like that. And like they've adjusted their budget to the lowest payment on there. So you had negative amortization, you had an interest only, you had a 15-year and a 30-year. Now, obviously, 15 years is going to pay your house off the quickest if you jumped on that. But most people, being human nature, like, well, we're going to go up to Glenwood Springs this weekend, or we're going to, we want to go skiing this weekend. We want to save that $700. So we're just going to do the negative AM this month. Well, then they get into the habit of that. The rates adjusted. It started throwing their payments.
Yeah, as money is emotional, psychological.
Yeah. So it started throwing their payments up. They couldn't make the payments anymore. Hence the foreclosure crisis. And there were tens of thousands of these loans out there. Now that's what brought that on in 2008. Now I want to address something about the mortgage, or sorry, the COVID, I'm sorry, the contrast between 2008 and 2020. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we had, love them or hate them, we had a pretty good administrator in the office that saw what happened in 2008, because, the American real estate economy is 16.1% of our economy in the United States. And that's the largest economy in the world.
Housing globally makes up a massive amount of the global market.
Right. But the American housing market makes up a huge piece of the entire global market, and a big money go around, right?
Yeah.
Putting money in the system, trickle down effect, all that supports so many ancillary businesses and jobs around it, right? So in 2008, that the housing crisis in the United States caused a worldwide recession. Well, the administration that we had in the office in 2020 said, well, we see some lockdowns and stuff coming on. Let's spur on a little bit of the economy. They went and bought over $1 trillion worth of mortgage-backed securities and drove those rates down, drove the mortgage rates down, and just motivated everything else. They actually called mortgage lenders and realtors, necessary workers. We were not subject to the lockdown because we needed to get out and work. We were very necessary to the economy, just like healthcare workers. They literally gave us those letters.
Pause. I hate the idea.
I don't.
Where does the government get off saying you're a necessary worker or not? I want to clear the air there. Keep going.
I know. I don't agree with it. I'm not in agreement with this, but I'm just saying, I'm recounting history, right? So they call this, necessary workers, like So we had to carry a letter around with us to begin with. But they, that's almost like martial law to me, but hey, you know, what do I know? So that drove the rates down. People are wanting to buy. They're buying sight unseen, subject to inspection. They're buying, you know, like you said, $25,000 to $50,000 over appraisal. They're doing this, and you know, because all those rates were down so far.
Yeah.
I mean, and what that did is it spurred the economy on. That's what allowed so many people to sit home and just collect unemployment for so many months. You know, that's what started new industries. It started. You know, brought out the food delivery industry so big, Uber Eats and DoorDash and, you know, all those guys.
Service industry
is huge, right? It created more ancillary businesses around it. So it just kept spurring the economy. So in 2022, the current administration decided that it was time to sell those back. In January 2022. They announced in December 2021 they were going to start selling them back in January. Well, they pretty much sold them all back in January. And that's what tanked our rates. That is exactly what tanked our rates. They sold that $1.3 trillion worth of mortgage-backed securities back to the bonds. They sold them off. And so then the bond market needed to increase the rate to attract that money back in from somewhere else. They had to replace that $1.3 trillion hole that was left by our government, our administration, selling those back.
Yep.
So they had to jack the rates up to bring that money back in.
Quantitative tightening.
Hole. What's that?
Quantitative tightening.
Exactly.
So today, here's where we're at. Okay. So U.S. home equity has hit the highest level on record over the last, I think back in 2022 it did, 27.8 trillion in equity that homeowners in America are sitting on. 39% of homes in the U.S. are owned free and clear. And then 29% of that, out of like 50% or more that have equity, which means 68.1% of all homes in the marketplace have at least 50% of equity or more or are owned free and clear. And so right now, you've got a completely different environment of homeowner.
Yeah. People aren't upside down.
Well, you've got a different homeowner today than you did in 2008. Guys, we're not going to crash. The housing market's not going to crash. The numbers, the underlying fundamentals show it's not going to crash. And it's because we're in a better situation. People learned from 2008, that whole adjustable interest rate that Mark's talking about. People don't mess with that stuff anymore. Like you can find it. It's not prevalent like it was. And not only that, but you've got a stronger home buyer because the credentialed home buyer today has more credentials or is more stable financially. So their credit score has to be better. They have to verify income. Those verifications on income are more stringent now than they were prior to 2008. And so all the people that you have sitting in homes today, they do have that equity in their home. They do have what I like to call staying power.
Right.
If they want to stay in their home, they are financially positioned to do that. And so you're not going to see a bunch of these foreclosures. I mean, you saw a slight uptick. I mean, I'm not going to ignore that. You're going to have that in this kind of environment when we go through a mild recession. And that's really what we're at. We're in a mild recession, and they're going to pull back on these rates again. We're expecting probably Q1, Q2 of next year. Probably by middle of next year, you're going to see those rates pop back down to high fours, maybe mid fives, somewhere in that range. And so right now, you come in at that higher interest rate, buy the home, and then you've got a better deal on the home from the negotiation side. Again, I reiterate, you marry the purchase price, divorce the interest rate later. And so you go in and refinance. And in a few months, mathematically, you will be money ahead if you do that right.
Yep.
But you need people that know what the heck they're talking about when you go in and buy the home. You need a good team of people around you. So
yes. And I appreciate what you're saying about that because I feel like I'm beating a dead horse sometimes when I'm trying to get that information.
But it's the media. They throw out stuff and granted, sometimes there's good points made there, but it's like their news cycles go so fast, and who can get the data out the fastest wins, and it doesn't matter.
And if
like
it bleeds,
they can sensationalize something and make it sound like, oh, for the next 50 years, housing's done for. When really it's like, oh, we got about like a 3-month period we're getting ready to go through, but they need to report on that. It sells because it sensationalizes and it makes people fearful, and people bite on that because people don't forget what
And
they'll forget
it as
what you do, but they don't
absolutes.
forget how you make them feel, like psychologically. Money's psychological, and so when the media puts stuff out like that, people latch onto it. That's all I'm saying, and I'm like fired up, as you can see.
Right? No, I absolutely. You can literally go search stories on the internet and find a news channel that's going to support any angle you want. You'll find a story that'll support any angle you want, and it is so confusing. And I don't blame the consumers for being confused, but what we're trying to give you is absolute facts.
But this is where skill comes in for guys like us,
Right?
and that's why we do what we do, you know.
So
Man, again, numbers don't lie. 3 million households that make over 150,000 right now in America are sitting on the sidelines and renting. You know that the rent, when you look at the projections on this, and some people could push back on me. You see the podcast, you disagree, send me an email. I'll tell you you're wrong. It's okay. But when you run the models out, even 10 years, and you amortize out what you would pay as a renter versus home ownership, there's a stigma around cost of ownership. In some pockets of the market, cost of ownership is more than renting, yes. But in quite a few pockets of the market, cost of ownership is actually cheaper or about the same as renting, but you're building equity. So your wealth building vehicle is there, whereas with renting, you're not. And if you amortize that out over 30 years, I think you're losing, I think it was something close to $468,000 when I ran the models out over a 30-year period if you just rented. And I'm looking like in our market here, you got a lot. I mean, landlords love you. I'm going to, own property, whatever.
Hey,
you have to make money. I get that. But people are people too, and they're renting from you. And sometimes greed isn't a good idea. In fact, greed is never a good idea. If you price your rental fair, you're going to have a good renter that would stay with you. And not always. Do your background checks and all that. But what I'm getting at is a lot of the landlords are all they see is the dollars. They could care less that there's a person behind that living in that home. So they will crank those rates up, the rental cost year over year, as much as they possibly can. And that's unsustainable for the renter. And so that cost of ownership piece, I have a monthly payment of, for easy math, I mean, it's more than $1,000, but let's just call it $1,000. And then my cost of ownership is $200 or $300 extra, $500 extra a month because I've got repairs or something that comes up. Well, if you look at that side by side with, okay, I'm going to increase rent by, I think last year it was 14%, according to some of the stats that came out from Zillow and NAIR and a few other places, National Association of Realtors, 14% year over year on that rental monthly cost for that renter. When you take those numbers and you put them side by side and you amortize that out, and then you look at the inflation rates that go with it, you actually see about a $500,000 loss for that renter over a 30-year period.
Absolutely.
That's a whole house, guys. A whole house that you could have bought.
Easily.
But again, caveat that with it's different pockets too, right? Like some pockets, it may be a little bit cheaper to rent. You're going to have to do that assessment. I will help you do the assessment. If you need help with it, give me a call. I will. And I'll tell you the truth, because we do financial coaching in my business as well. We don't put our clients into houses that they can't afford. It's unethical. That turn and burn business, you realtors that do that to your clients, get out of the business. We don't want you here. We don't want you here.
Absolutely.
But I'm telling you now, even with the interest rates being higher right now, looking at the way, playing chess a little bit here, looking at this, what we know to be true, it's smart if you're, as a buyer, can get into a home, it's smart to do that and do the refi in maybe 6 months, 8 months.
All right.
That's all I'm saying.
So
that was a long-winded soapbox. I'm sorry.
All right. I'm going to get you down off the soapbox for 10 seconds. 10 seconds. So Buffini and Dave Stevens. Now, Dave Stevens is this guy that I was talking about, has the freaking stacked and jacked resume. Like, this guy has been he's a financial wizard and guru. Mm-hmm. And I it's highly encourage you guys to go listen to that podcast. But we boiled down a few talking points, advice for agents, and Patrick hit it.
Yeah, I got you here. So advice for agents, guys. Every time the Fed start raising rates, they always overshoot. And I'm not trying to beat up on them too bad. I don't like the Feds. I mean, no one does, but they always overshoot. You can't predict exactly what you should do when you increase the rate. So they always overshoot. They always create a recession, small or large. And then when they do, the rates drop shortly thereafter. And so
and that's
as
going
an
back
agent,
to 1955.
1955 to now, that's a really solid data set. And when you go in to invest, you want to look at 10 years of history. We've got all the way back to 1955 with this data. I mean, it's very, very
Almost
reliable.
70 years of history.
Yeah. And so you as an agent, you have to know this. Every time the Fed start raising rates, they always overshoot. And it's like a slinky. When it goes down the stairs, there's a delay in it tumbling down, right? So you need to be ahead of that. You need to be ahead of that with your clients. And that's why we're doing this podcast today, because we're trying to get out ahead of that for the next 6 months to a year. Mm-hmm. We're already there. We've done our due diligence. You need to do the same. Give us a call if you need help. I don't care if you're an agent. I'm an agent too. I'll help you out. Give me a call. Give Mark a call. We can walk you through it. The rates always drop shortly thereafter. And so you need to be working with your client on this, and you need to understand the mechanics behind how the market works. If you have questions, go back to our Things You Should Know About Investing podcast and watch it. You can learn some things about the market. If you're a real estate agent that used to work in the service industry, maybe you were a waiter at a restaurant and you don't have a finance background, go watch that podcast and give us a call. All right. So you need to understand that. So that's advice for you. Thing number 2, rates are coming down again. They aren't going to be up at this level much longer. So you need to start messaging that to your clients and let them know so that they can position, because you are their fiduciary. You owe it to them to be a subject matter expert. People also need to know not to focus on the here and now, because the here and now we're in an awkward technical state with the market right now. Mm-hmm. There's some weird stuff. They called it inflation when lumber prices went up, but it was it was an employment issue. They couldn't get people, right?
Yeah, they didn't have enough masks.
Yeah, but it's not that the new price of a piece of lumber is this now. It was that because they had less of it because of pinch points in the market. But those things are getting corrected. Some of those prices are coming down. Now, granted, they may come down. They'll be like at a higher price than they were before. Right. But those inflation rates that were projected on those things are not actually what they were shown to be on some of those items that impact the building industry, the real estate industry. So it's a technical environment we're in. There's all these technicalities, and you need to understand what those technicalities are. And that's what we're talking about today. You can't sit there and try to predict something like this, but you need to make the main things the main things. Look at it from a 5,000-foot view, flyover view, and then come in and look at the key points on that and really understand those for your client. And you're going to do them a better service by doing that. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely.
Yeah. And then the next thing is, if you want to participate in the rebound that's coming without it burning you to a crisp, without it eating you alive, you've got to become a listing agent. Because right now, the problem is the inventory. You may have all the buyers in the world, but if you can't get them in a home because the inventory is low, your business is going to struggle. Okay? So you need help with that, give us a call as well.
Send me the buyers and just let me know when you find a house. I'll tell you which one to put in there.
There you go. Right. So, but seriously, I mean, this is kind of a common thing. People know this if you're in this industry. Listings, you want listings. Lead with listings, right? How do you do that? Well, it's a belly-to-belly business. It is person business. You need to be having conversations with people. You need to understand what's motivating people to sell right now and walking away from that lower rate. If you don't understand that data, you can't tailor your marketing around that. You can't tailor your conversations around that. When I say tailor, I'm not saying manipulate people to sell their home. What I'm saying is you can't get connected with the people that need to sell their home because you haven't done the due diligence to understand who is selling their home and why.
You need to be able to present the information.
That's right. And when you do, you get connected with those people. So that's how you're going to stay alive. That's how you're going to do well in this business right now in this difficult technical season we're in with the economics being what they are. The last thing is, if you really want to be a pro, you have to act differently than your emotions. So what post hoc fallacies do you have going on inside of you? As a person that runs a business, I don't care if you're a chair maker or you sell houses or you own a store somewhere and sell clothes. Your reality in your mind, and I'm not advocating for my truth, your truth. There's only one truth. Fact is fact. But what I'm saying is your perception and the way you operate as a person, you need to be cognizant of that. And you need to be asking yourself what post hoc fallacies you have inside you that if you tweaked a few things and thought about things a little bit differently, how would your business explode and thrive?
So you and I are putting our money where our mouth is on this with time and money. You know, we're putting in 12 to 14 hour days consistently. Our phones start going at 7 in the morning. We don't shut down till 9, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. And we're tired, but we're preparing for what's coming because we
believe in what we're doing though too.
Absolutely. We've seen the data. It's actually excited us, got us fired up. Yesterday we spent at a school district, new educator, orientation, and we were in the vendor fair, and we talked to,
I don't know how many people.
They had about 400 to 500 new hires come through. And this is school district hires that employs about 10,000 people, right? It's one of the largest school districts in the state of Colorado, but they had about 400 to 500 people come through. We were the only real estate and mortgage company there, and we were partnering up, presenting a benefit to these people. We left with minimum 9 buyers. There's some more in my 9
buyers,
box.
2 sellers, 24 other people who are interested.
Yeah, in one day. So,
well, in all those conversations, the common themes were, if I have a home, I don't want to lose my low rate, but I need to upsize because I have a larger family now. I've heard that multiple times.
Right.
Another one is I want to buy, but I'm scared of the interest rates. Another one was, I don't know what to believe because of all the ups and downs and all of that. But it's, having those conversations and getting a pulse on the market. I mean, those are anecdotal pieces of data, but they're still valuable. What's interesting about the anecdotal pieces of data is they're actually lining up with the true stats that we found, that we boiled down and looked at, that were viable stats, not distorted stats. And so there's probably a little less than half of millennials left that are still wanting to have a home ownership, and it's 17.1 million. So there's a lot of people on the sidelines here, and that doesn't even include millennials. I mean, the 3 million or so buyers that are sitting out right now, that's not all millennials.
Right. No, it's not. There's still the 3 million families, renters, that are still making over $150,000 a year, right? That are still renting. So, all right, our advice to buyers: marry the purchase price, divorce the interest rate later, and take advantage of the better negotiating environment. Number 2, there are a lot of millennial buyers coming. And number 3, we dropped from 4.1 million sales to 5.1 million sales to 4.2 million this year. And that's expected to increase by another 500,000 in 2024. So take advantage of it now. You have less competition now, but I mean, think about it, guys. We're at 80% of what we were a year ago. 80%. Yeah. I'll take 80% of anything. I'm sorry. I'll take 80% of my fuel economy. I'll take 80% of my, income. I'll take 80%. It's better than 0.
The people, I want to close out with this because we're coming to an end here. There's a section of the population that I know when they watch this, I know who you are. You're the folks that feel so discouraged that you're never going to have home ownership.
Talk to us. Give us a call.
Well, yeah, talk to us and give us a call. But here's what I want to say to you. I'm not going to sit here like Dave Ramsey and say, oh, don't buy coffee and save in your budget. Like, that frustrates you. I get that. Here's what I'm going to tell you, though. Practical application, common sense, and wisdom. Go to the ant, O sluggard, if you look in the Bible. Don't be lazy. Work hard. Work hard. You've got to be vigilant in your work. Any money you have, you save it. You live prudent, you live wise, and you start stacking cash right now. That's it. That's what it is. It's work. One of my favorite quotes, I always quote stuff. You guys know this if you watched our podcast. Opportunities are often missed because they look like hard work dressed in overalls. It's not pretty. You got to get up and work your butt off, save your money. You will be a homeowner. You put your nose to the grindstone, you put a plan in place, and you execute. That's how you become a homeowner. It's not easy. You got to put the work in. If you come from a background where you came from nothing, you can do this. You can do it. Give us a call. I'll walk you through it. I've got some life planning templates that I can give you, and it will help you architect things out. We did a podcast on working on your life, not just in your life, and you can go back and watch that too. But I will help you. Just send me an email. I'll send you my my life planning template, and it'll help you re-architect and rethink through how you're managing your finances. I'll give that to you free of charge.
And guys, we both came from nothing. Please don't think that we were born with a silver spoon in our mouth at all. I was working on another farm off of our farm in Wyoming when I was 10 years old for $2 an hour, just to make enough money to buy parts for my bicycle to be able to ride 5 miles into town, just so I could actually have some kind of a life. I mean, that's the way we grew up.
You see these memes that go around, and it's like, Joe Bob worked one job and his wife stayed home, and look at this amazing house he owned, right? You know, and then you look at now and people are making way more and they're living like in a Cracker Jack box and can barely get by. And for some of you, that is a reality in your mind, and you need to shake that right now. And I know I've been there. I've been there where you have nothing. You got to look around, make a plan, and execute. Mm-hmm. That's what you need to do. And I'm talking to you aside from this real estate podcast topic that we're doing, the topic of real estate today, all of that, like, just as a person. Is it an income issue? Do you need to go back to school? Do you need to find a job that pays you more? Do you need to have a side hustle? Do you need to grind? What is that? I'm just putting that out there to you. That's hard. That's hard to hear. That may sound rude, but it's really the honest truth. And nobody...
You need to take in a roommate to cut your expenses. Do you need to what do you need to do to subsidize your income? What do you need to do to reduce your expenses? Like all of this stuff, right? There's ebb and flow. And when you do buy a home, you don't want to buy that home and barely be scraping by when you get the home. You want to have joy and peace when you buy that home. So don't hear us say we just want you to buy something and so we can benefit. Like, don't do that. Don't do that. We care about you. Don't do that. Be wise with what you're doing. And that's just where I'm at. My personal convictions and how I run my home financially. You want to make wise decisions there, but you have to work hard. So that's a plug for the guys listening to this, that are guys and ladies that are listening to this, that are skeptical about what we're saying. Absolutely. And I'm looking up how many millionaires made by real estate. Majority of them. So 90% of all millionaires become so through owning real estate. That goes back to the economic modeling, renting versus owning. You start having a wealth building vehicle, and you'll hear these billionaires that tell you don't own a home and all this other stuff. So we'll address that next podcast, maybe, guys, or we'll address that soon. So yeah, all right. Guys, we'll wrap it up. That's all I have. Are you? I think we're good. Like, guys, again, invitation stands. Call us, ask us questions, drop us an email. We love answering these questions. We can't always get into the minutia or really get in the weeds like we want to on this podcast, because we could drag it out for 2 to 3 hours. You should hear some of our conversations. They go on for hours. Yeah. So, guys, we're just trying to give you a 50,000 foot level view of what we're seeing, and we just hope that you can catch a glimpse of what we're trying to communicate. Guys, if you have any thoughts about this, or if you want to challenge us, I invite you, put a comment down in the comment section here on the video, hit the bell, follow us, subscribe, hit the like button. And if you got any questions, reach out. So that's all I have today. Pat Smith out. Marco. All right, mic check 1, mic check 2. I'm Henry VIII, I am Henry VIII, I am. You ever seen on Wizard of Oz the little Oompa Loompa looking dudes? Or not, I guess they're not little Oompa Loompas, but they go, oh, we yo, oh. or like Oompa Loompa, Oompa doo. We should have an ice cream before we start the podcast. That's Willy Wonka.